Guys, urgent news! In this video, we're going to talk about the hackers who stole almost $200 million, around 1 billion reais, from accounts held at the central bank and tried to launder the funds using cryptocurrencies. This is one of the most serious hacker attacks in the world, in history. We're going to break everything down in today's video, but first, comment below, where is your money? Is it in savings? Is it under your mattress? Is it in fixed income? Is it in real estate funds? Is it in cryptocurrencies? Comment below, I want to know. Let's go straight to my computer screen to react to the news. As I read and analyze the news, leave your comments. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, go.
And a hacker attack on a software company that provides services to banks and other financial institutions took more than 1 billion reais in what is being called the heist of the century. The target was CNN Software, founded in 1999. In a statement, the central bank reported that CNN Softwares, a technology service provider for institutions that offer transactional accounts but do not have their own communication channels, notified them of the attack on its technological infrastructure. The central bank ordered CNN to disconnect the institution's access to the infrastructures it operates. The central bank's advisor also stated that no system managed by the central bank was affected. To talk about the risks of hacker attacks, we're now joined by Arthur Igreja, who is a specialist in technology and innovation. Hi, Arthur. Good morning. Welcome to Real Time.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me.
We're the ones who should thank you for joining us. Well, Arthur, you know, I was reading this news and honestly, it's a bit alarming, isn't it? We know about the dangers of hacker attacks around the world, but this news was really, very devastating, right? Is it possible to know in advance how this attack happened?
Regarding the technique used by the hackers, we still don't know, but what happened is extremely serious. So I think it's important to point out, even to reassure people, that to a large extent, when we talk about these amounts, some estimate, it could exceed 1 billion reais. Others say it's around 400 million, but in the end, it doesn't really matter because we're talking about the financial system, we're talking about money, and above all, about trust. So,
above all, trust. Because, you understand that you can't keep your money at home because of inflation, which eats away at your money. But then you think, well, I'll start putting it in the bank. Then you think, no, the bank isn't yielding much. I'll start putting it in brokerages. I'll start leaving it in a checking account, which is that type of checking account where if you leave your money there, it earns interest, right? So it ends up yielding something.
Now, people start to panic, right? They say, oh, I'll keep it at home again, right? Anyway.
what happened is that this company provides services, and this is very common in the tech world. We have this stacking of services and technology. No one is able to do everything from end to end. So it's kind of like in our personal lives, we use services from Meta, services from Google, services from Microsoft, from various companies to do our work. When it comes to financial institutions, it's the same thing. Well, this company had this vulnerability, which was exploited by hackers, and they managed to access what are called reserve accounts. What does that mean? These are the accounts between financial institutions. They are accounts registered with the central bank, because we have to remember that within a single day, people or companies transfer funds from bank A to bank B, and also from bank B to back to bank A. And this account is never at zero. So there is this buffer, this reserve, called the reserve account, precisely to balance things out and close the books. They managed to withdraw these funds from 5 institutions and try to convert them into cryptocurrencies, precisely to exit the traditional financial system. So that's when we started to get a series of alerts from the companies that run the exchanges, right? The ones that handle this conversion.
Because cryptocurrency is really good, for laundering money, right? Because once it goes into the blockchain, which is a system behind Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on, you can only see that a certain transaction happened, that it went from one wallet to another, but you don't know who owns the wallet. Because one of the features is that first, it's not a government system, it's a universal system. I can keep my money in a cold wallet, which is basically a physical wallet that's not connected to the internet, right? So for example, here, you can simply take it to any country and no one will know what you're doing. There are only a few institutions, depending on their size, that might end up knowing who owns that wallet. but regular people, right? If someone steals that amount, puts it in a wallet, goes and buys Bitcoin, makes a transaction, and then sends it to another country, it becomes very hard to track. So, I mean, there are things that are good, right, for cryptocurrencies, and then, well, it's human nature, isn't it? There's always a good side, and there's always a human being with the creativity to use technology for bad purposes, right?
Because these were large amounts and the flow was absolutely abnormal. So that's when the central bank starts to take action, right? And block those excesses, in other words, to contain damage.
So how do people were saying that in this case, right? You explained a little bit about the access route, right? How do they exploit the vulnerabilities of these companies? But we know that for other types of companies that don't necessarily work with these financial means, as in the case mentioned, how do hackers exploit vulnerabilities within companies? Because you really have to be careful, right? We know this isn't the first time, nor will it be the last that this kind of thing, unfortunately, will happen.
No doubt, it really draws attention because the amounts involved here are huge. And I'll say it again, is the basic system of trust in the economy, right? Yeah, but regarding all other businesses, it's no coincidence that cybersecurity is at the top of the list of priorities and concerns because the internet gives this impression that everything is perfect, everything is working until a catastrophic failure happens, right? So up until the moment when we lose internet access, but especially when these attacks happen, the way these attacks happen, hackers keep testing to see if there's any vulnerability. So the metaphor I use is that it's like a thief walking down the street. What he's looking for is a house with the gate left open, a house that has a weakness in its access. So they try to find vulnerabilities in the system. Now, the second most common method is what's called social engineering. That's phishing. It's trying to send malicious links. It's trying to...
Social engineering basically is when the human being themselves, you are the ones who create the opportunity there. We're the ones who open the door for the scam. So, for example, let's suppose there's a pair of Nike sneakers that costs $500, for instance. Then you see sale, a link, and now it's $10. In other words, $500 on sale for $10. Come on, right? If it went from $500 to $400 or $350, okay, but $10, $20, $50, you just can't believe it, right? But a lot of people believe it, click the link, and then all sorts of problems happen. Or, for example, you know that the bank doesn't usually get in touch with you, right? You either talk to the bank in person at the local branch, or you can communicate through the bank's own dedicated mobile application. Then you get a message on WhatsApp, or you get a phone call, or you receive an SMS, a text message. Then it says something like, look, for security reasons, you need to renew your password. Here's the link. So you click the link, enter your new password, and that's it. It's over. They've already broken into your account. So this issue of social engineering usually happens because you ended up causing it, basically opening the door for the scammer to get in. Let's continue.
It's about exploiting the carelessness that people often have when they use repeated and very weak passwords. So what are they trying to do? They try to impersonate a person or a company in order to access a system and cause harm.
Now, who might have been most affected? We know that a lot of people were, right? But regarding the scale of this attack, and we talk a little about its scope.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the ones most affected are two groups, right? The first is the software company itself, CIM, because just imagine for the central bank to disconnect them from the system, it means it was a very serious breach, a failure that can't just be investigated while they continue operating in parallel. So what?
And recently I mentioned here a problem that happened at Google that took down the entire global internet for 18 minutes. I don't know if you saw that. I'll leave that video here later, but just so you can see how dependent we are on the internet, how there are just a few institutions that practically control the entire internet. And unfortunately, what we can really do is equip ourselves, right, with security. In my case, for my YouTube accounts, I have a physical USB drive. So even if someone hacks in, they'll need my password, they'll need my USB drive. So they'd have to like physically attack and rob me on the street, for example, right? In the case of cryptocurrency, having your physical wallet, changing your passwords every 2 months. In fact, in this video, I showed how you can find out if your passwords have been leaked or if the company where you use your password, where you sign up for a service has somehow been hacked, right? And if the data was leaked, including yours. So you can check that there. I taught how to identify and change your password. Watch that video later. And just a reminder, guys, I've opened the channel membership here where basically you can become a level 1 member. You'll receive videos in advance. I will reply to your comments down below with priority, right? Your comment will definitely get a response. And if you're level 2, on top of all that, you'll get special videos for members, and you'll also be able to make a post with a photo in our community, okay? You just click here on Access Community, and you can post a photo there with your question and ask me anything you want. Consulting, any questions, any recommendations, what I'm doing to make money, where I'm investing, anything you want. If you're a level 2 member, all right, I'll leave it right here below. See, it's written here, become a member. Click there. I'm sure you like the benefits. All right, let's continue.
That is to say, for this company, it's quite a serious loss. And the second type of damage is precisely to the image of the Brazilian financial system, the central bank, and the institutions, because I'll say it again to reassure everyone, we have no issues with our personal or business accounts. No money has been taken. So rest assured, there's no need to rush to check your balance. We have to remember that there are several mechanisms in place, and financial institutions, in fact, have reserves to restore amounts lost to fraud.
I've already taken a quick look here. My money is all there, right? Even though it's just a number, isn't it? But really, if there were any problem, the bank does have money set aside, right? They have a sort of reserve safety cushion that they're required to maintain in order to pay out. Of course, depending on the amount, the bank could go under, right? And to prevent the bank from collapsing, the government steps in and injects money to keep it afloat, because if one bank fails, others might follow, and that could trigger a general economic crisis, right?
In attacks. So all of this is heavily provisioned, a kind of insurance that is also put in place. Yeah, but of course we have a damaged reputation here, but without a doubt, CIM is the company most affected in this whole situation.
Do you think this robbery will really go down in history as the biggest ever to happen in Brazil?
It's too early to talk about the amounts, right? Because I repeat, we're still getting news in the first few hours. So that's why the figures are varying so much, right? Some are talking about a few million. Then we get to this figure of over 1 billion. But the point is that it's certainly at the top of the ranking of the biggest attacks on the Brazilian financial system. As you said very well, it's not the first, and it won't be the last. The economy has become highly digitalized. Money today is digital. So that's why we have these criminals who, by the way, don't just operate in Brazil or in the Brazilian financial system. We have Brazilian hackers who exploit vulnerabilities all over the world, and the reverse is also true.
That's why I brought this news here to the channel, right? You're hearing me in Portuguese, English, Spanish, and German, but these attacks are happening all over the world, aren't they? In fact, that issue with the internet on Google that caused problems, it wasn't an attack, or at least they haven't said it was an attack yet. Actually, they don't really know, let's put it that way. If it really was a hacker, and I think that if it was, they probably wouldn't say so, because that would damage Google's image. But basically, this kind of thing happens all over the world, right? So that's why I brought this news about the breach in the financial system, right?
So these crimes happen without borders, but this one, considering what happens within Brazil, is certainly at the top of the ranking.
Now, Arthur, just so we can wrap up, right? Is there any way we know there is, but it's difficult because, as you mentioned in your first answer, they find loopholes, right? Ways to act. But is there any way, any tip you would give to those watching us on how to protect themselves against these attacks?
Look, for those who are business owners and are watching us, it's very important to find the right partners and make the proper investments. Many times we have what are called white hat hackers who are able to exploit these vulnerabilities, and they even notify companies saying, look, I found this here and I could break in if I were a black hat hacker. And many companies don't take action. So it's important to run tests. There are companies that do only this. They find the vulnerabilities and then suggest measures, recommending which tools could mitigate them. So I think the starting point for those watching us is first and foremost to carry out this assessment. And the second step is...
Yeah, for example, if you're launching an app, if you're a small or medium-sized business launching an app, you can hire a shielding service, right? So, for example, I even programmed it myself, right? I tried to secure it as best as I could, but I want a very high level of security. So you hire a company just to like identify vulnerabilities and close those gaps. So what Arthur Igreja said is really important here.
a lot of training on people's habits. Fortunately, this is becoming more and more common. Companies and people are becoming more aware that the biggest vulnerability, I'll say it again, that gets exploited is social engineering. So
social engineering, like I mentioned. So change your passwords. Watch that video about the Google breach, because there I teach you how to identify all the places where you've ever used the password. Okay? It will tell you which ones are compromised and which ones are too easy or repeated. And then on a single screen, you can make all the changes. There are also some services you've never used again, and you can delete them from the system. That's a golden tip. Okay? Remember, become a channel member level 1 or level 2. You'll be supporting the channel and you'll also enjoy the benefits. And remember, if you want to ask me a special question about any topic, become a level 2 member and make your post there in the community, okay? I'll leave this Google video here. See you in the next video. See you soon.